Welcome back to Challenge Accepted with Jonah C, the show where we push boundaries, break limits, and level up our lives. Apologies for not dropping the show yesterday. We ended up having some technical issues, but I found a way to make it up to you. I'll be dropping a new show, episode 3, on Tuesday called Life Doesn't Get Easier, We Get Stronger. Now, tell me if this sounds familiar. You've ever had a conversation where someone just didn't get it? Or maybe you've been in a situation where your emotions took over and you reacted in a way you regretted. That's what today's episode is all about. Emotional intelligence, otherwise known as EI, the ultimate cheat code for success. If you want better relationships, stronger communication skills, and the ability to handle stress like a boss, this episode is for you. We'll break down emotional intelligence into simple, practical steps you can apply immediately. Plus, I've got 5 challenges for you throughout this episode that will help you master your emotions, communicate better, and level up your life. Are you ready? I am. I'm Jonah. I'm your person. Let's get to it. All right, let's break it down. Emotional intelligence isn't about being overly emotional or suppressing emotions. It's about understanding them, managing them, and using them as tools for success. It's built on 5 core skills. Number 1, one of the most important, self-awareness, knowing how you feel and why you feel that way. Number 2, self-regulation, controlling your reactions so your emotions don't control you. Number 3, motivation, channeling emotions into actions that push you forward. Number 4, and I think this one's getting a bad rap these days, empathy, understanding what others feel and responding appropriately. And finally, number 5, social skills, building strong relationships, communicating clearly, and handling conflict like a pro. Once again, self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Why does this matter? Studies show that 90% of top performers in business and leadership have high emotional intelligence. It's the secret weapon of entrepreneurs, athletes, CEOs, and anyone trying to dominate their field. So here's challenge number 1, the self-awareness check. And take this seriously. For the next 24 hours, I'm going to stop there. If you really want to master emotional intelligence, I really challenge you to work through these challenges and really put these to the test for yourself. Okay, let's start again. For the next 24 hours, I want you to stop and check in with your emotions every time you, number 1, walk into a new environment, start a new conversation with someone, and then react to a situation that triggers you. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? How is this emotion affecting my actions? And then write down your observations. Before I go on to the next portion of the show, I wanted to point out that this season, every show that I do will come with challenges, every single one. But they are tested, and many people have done them. I have adopted them for the show and every segment. But know this, whenever I write content, I always got all of you in mind. And so the challenges are doable. All you have to do is accept the challenge. So let's move on. Let's talk about something that gets a lot of people in trouble: lack of self-control. Ever sent a text when you were mad and immediately regretted it? Ever had an argument where you let your emotions run wild? That's a lack of self-regulation. And we're going to be talking about mastering self-control. So self-regulation isn't about ignoring emotions. It's about controlling how you respond. And one of the best ways to do this is the 10-second rule. I did a reel on this as an introduction to the show. So whenever you feel triggered, pause for 10 seconds. Take a deep breath. Then ask yourself, is what I'm going to do going to help me or hurt me in the long run? So here's challenge number 2. I call it the 10-second rule. For the next 3 days, again, you have to take this serious. You have to say, challenge accepted, I'm going to do this. For the next 3 days, whenever you feel annoyed, frustrated, or angry, pause for 10 seconds before reacting. This alone can change how you handle conflict, both personally and professionally. And friends, this actually does work. And when you get really good at it and master it, I'm not kidding you, life does get a lot easier. Now, let's talk about using EI for success and motivation. Here's a truth bomb for you. Emotional intelligence isn't about handling emotions, it's about using them to fuel success. This process, friends, has to be deliberate. It has to be purposeful. It can't be a fleeting thought, right, in your subconscious. It has to be upfront. High EI people don't let setbacks crush them. They reframe failures. They find motivation. They keep pushing forward. Again, this is something that is at the forefront of pretty much everything they do. And a great tool for this is the why power technique. Again, the why power technique. Instead of just setting a goal, ask yourself, why does this goal matter to me? How will achieving it make me feel? And then how will it improve my life? Are you ready for a third challenge? Good. Let's call this one the why power exercise. I want you to stop, grab a piece of paper, grab your phone, wherever you choose to write. But here is the challenge. Write down one goal and list 3 reasons why it's important to you. Keep this list where you can see it, and then when motivation fades, go back to your why. Go ahead and stop right now, pause the podcast, and write all this down. All right, let's talk about one of my favorites, empathy. I call this the secret superpower. A lot of people think empathy is just about being nice. Wrong. It's actually a superpower for building strong relationships, avoiding unnecessary conflict, and even becoming a better negotiator. What's the trick? Active listening. Instead of thinking about what you'll say next, just listen. Notice their body language and tone, and then repeat back what they say. Like, so I think what I hear you saying is, and a big mistake that people make is listening to react versus listening to understand. Super important. All right, challenge number 4. I told you I'd have a lot of challenges for you, and they're small and doable. Let's do this. This is called the Active Listening Challenge. For the next 48 hours, in every conversation, practice active listening by 1, asking one follow-up question before responding, summarizing what the other person said, and then acknowledging their emotions before giving advice. Let's see if I can come up with a quick example. This is not in my content. Is somebody's explaining something and you say something to the effect of, okay, what I think I heard you say was, you want to go to school and graduate within 3 years. Is that what I heard you say? They respond. And by summarizing what the other person said, you're acknowledging that and validating what they said. And then saying, I can see that makes you super excited. I'm super excited for you. Do you see what I did there? Nothing about that part of the conversation had anything to do with me. Okay, let's talk about the art of connection. Let's talk about social skills because let's face it, being smart isn't enough. If you can't connect with people, you'll hit a ceiling in life. So 3 things that boost social intelligence. Nonverbal cues, so your body language speaks louder than your words. Make eye contact. Relax your posture and match the other person's energy. Number 2, conflict resolution. Instead of proving you're right, focus on finding a solution. And then number 3, authenticity. People connect with realness, so just be yourself. And then here's your final challenge. I'm going to call it the social connection challenge. For the next week, focus on strengthening one relationship. Check in with someone, have a meaningful conversation, or practice small talk with a stranger. Once again, all of these challenges will not work unless you're deliberate and you're purposeful, you write it down, you use your calendar, whatever you need to do. But by doing these challenges, you will level up. Whenever I can, I'd love to provide bonus content. In this case, we're going to talk about how EI can improve mental health. So, emotional intelligence isn't just about success, it's about mental health. And high EI helps with reducing stress, you react less and stay in control, better decision making, emotions don't cloud your judgment, And then stronger relationships, less drama, more connection. And here's the kicker: EI is a skill you can develop. All right, we're going to take this bonus content to a whole new level. I felt a bit bad yesterday because I've committed to dropping these shows on time every week and it didn't happen. So I started beating up on myself and wallowing. And I thought, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're doing the exact same thing that you're asking your listeners and subscribers not to do. So instead of wallowing, I put pen to paper or fingers to typing keys and wrote a whole bunch of good content, some robust content, breaking down some of these core elements of emotional intelligence. And so what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time right now talking about how EI and mental health are interconnected. And I'd like to call this one the game changer you didn't know you needed. All right, so we've talked about emotional intelligence, what it is, how it impacts your relationships, your career, and your overall success. But now, let's dig even deeper into one of the most overlooked aspects of EI. Once again, mental health. So emotional intelligence isn't just about reading the room or handling conflict. It's a literal lifeline for your mental well-being. And today, we're going to break down exactly how it works, why it matters, and how you can start using it as a tool to protect, strengthen, and level up your mental health. Let's jump right in. Okay, let's talk about EI as your mental health guardian. Look, we live in a world that throws a lot at us. Stress, comparisons, uncertainty, and even personal battles that no one else sees. If you don't know how to navigate your emotions, they will control you. They will overwhelm you and push you toward burnout, anxiety, or even depression. Here's the kicker. High emotional intelligence gives you the power to manage your emotions before they manage you. Self-awareness helps you recognize when you're slipping into a negative mental state. Self-regulation gives you the tools to stop an emotional spiral before it gets out of control. Empathy strengthens your relationships, reducing feelings of loneliness and isolation. And social skills help you communicate when you need help instead of bottling it up. Emotional intelligence isn't just a nice-to-have skill, it's a gotta-have skill. And it's a mental health defense system. Let's talk about the science side and how EI rewires your brain for mental strength. We're going to go ahead and get a little scientific for a second. Your brain is wired to react to stress, fear, and negativity as a survival mechanism. But here's the problem. In the modern world, our brains don't know the difference between a real threat, like getting chased by a tiger, and a perceived threat, like getting ghosted by someone you like. Maybe that's me because I didn't drop the show on time. Oh, I'm doing it again. Sorry. This is where emotional intelligence hacks the system. High emotional intelligence strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and emotional control. This means you respond to stress rationally, not reactively. It also reduces amygdala hijacking, that fight or flight response that makes you freak out over things that don't actually require panic. And let me pause for a second. I want to read something to you I pulled off the internet. Your amygdala is a small almond-shaped structure inside of your brain. It's part of a larger network in your brain called the limbic system. So when it comes to your survival, your amygdala and limbic system are extremely important. These are parts of your brain that automatically detect danger. So lastly, it boosts dopamine and serotonin levels, and these are the chemicals that keep you feeling balanced, motivated, and happy. When you develop emotional intelligence, you're literally rewiring your brain to handle stress, anxiety, and challenges more effectively. Okay, let's move on to anxiety, depression, and EI. Let's talk about the connection no one talks about. So let's get real. Anxiety and depression are at an all-time high, especially in younger generations. Social media, societal pressure, financial stress, and personal struggles all play a role. But here's the wild part. Many people don't realize that emotional intelligence can significantly reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. And here's how. Self-awareness stops overthinking in its tracks. You recognize negative thought loops and challenge them before they spiral. Self-regulation keeps emotions from controlling your entire day. Instead of getting stuck in sadness or stress, you develop coping mechanisms to move forward. Motivation fuels resilience, And people with high EI don't give up when things get hard. They find a way to push through. Then empathy strengthens support systems. When you connect deeply with others, you don't feel alone in your struggles. And mental health isn't about therapy or medication, though both are important when needed. It's also about building an emotional intelligence toolbox that helps you navigate life's challenges. All right, it's time to talk about some emotional intelligence hacks to protect your mental health. Look, you don't need to be born with high EI. You can train yourself to develop it. Here are some powerful, real-world techniques you can start using today. The name it to tame it method. So whenever you feel stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, stop and name the emotion out loud. Sounds simple, but it works. Why? Because when you identify an emotion, you activate the rational part of your brain, reducing the control your emotions have over you. So instead of saying something like, I feel awful, say, I feel frustrated because I didn't get the outcome I wanted. Or, I feel anxious because I don't know what's going to happen next. And then so once you name it, you can tame it, meaning you can address it with logic instead of reacting emotionally. I'd like to introduce you to the 90-second rule. Did you know that emotions like anger and anxiety only last 90 seconds if you don't fuel them with more thoughts? Neuroscientist Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor discovered that emotions chemically last in your body for about a minute and a half. After that, they only continue if you keep replaying them in your mind. So, next time you feel overwhelmed, wait 90 seconds, breathe, and let the initial emotional reaction pass. You'll be surprised at how much clarity you gain. As part of how EI and mental health play a role, reframing the story strategy is super important as well. A lot of mental stress comes from the stories we tell ourselves. I'm not good enough. They probably hate me. I'm a failure. Stop and reframe it. Instead of saying, I failed, say, I learned something valuable. Instead of saying, they ignored me, say, maybe they're just busy. Instead of, I'm not good enough, say, I'm still growing and progress is happening. And the way you frame your experiences directly affects your mental health. Choose the story that serves you. All right, yay. We are in the final stretch of the show. And so we're going to wrap this up and talk about how EI and the future of mental wellness coincide. Mental health conversations are getting louder, which is amazing. But one of the most underrated aspects of mental wellness is how we manage our emotions, our thoughts, and our responses to life's challenges. It's not just about therapy, and it's not just about medication. It's about learning how to process emotions, regulate stress, and build resilience. And that's what emotional intelligence does. If you take nothing else from this episode, take this. Your mental health is not just about what happens to you, it's about how you respond. And emotional intelligence gives you the tools to respond with strength, clarity, and control. Ha! You thought you had all the challenges. And I've got one more for you. So here's the final challenge. What you need to do is create an emotional intelligence mental health check-in. So before we go, I challenge you to do this. Get your piece of paper, get your phone, write a note. And what I'd like for you to do is write down that one emotion that you've been struggling with lately. Use the name it to tame it technique to describe it. Reframe the story in a way that serves your growth, and then commit to one action today that strengthens your EI and mental health. I want to keep hearing from you. The last show generated a lot of comments, and I really did appreciate, the song, the playlist that you wrote to me on the healing and inspirational power of music. Thank you so much for engaging. For now, let's build a community of people who aren't just surviving, but actually thriving. Because at the end of the day, your emotional intelligence isn't just about success. It's about your mental peace, happiness, and overall well-being. And that's the real flex. Well, here we are at the end of the show. If or when you're faced with adversity, when you want more, when you're faced with so many choices, challenges, and decisions, when the goal feels or is monumental, how will you manage? What will you choose? And what will you decide? Will you crumble under pressure? Will you cave to those naysayers? And will you choose negativity? Or will you put these new skill sets to place and say, challenge accepted? I want this. I can do this. I've done this before. I will do this again. I've got this. I really want to challenge you today to challenge yourself to take on this new, doable, realistic, and reasonable challenges of emotional intelligence to level up. My final message to you, my friend, is you've got this. I believe in you. Now believe in yourself and make it happen. Once again, join me on Tuesday for a new show called Life Doesn't Get Easier, You Get Stronger. You don't want to miss that episode. For now, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming back. Have a great week.